Hi students, in this video we will be going over multi-step equations. Our essential question for today are, what are the different types of solutions for equations and how are the solutions to multi-step equations found? Our types of first we're going to go over the different types of solutions. So there are actually three types of solutions that we're going to be going over. There's one solution, many solutions, and no solution. Everything that we've done up to this point has been one solution where there is a specific answer or answer for the variable. So there's a number that represents that variable. But we're also going to talk today about many solutions and no solutions. So let's review a one solution type problem. This says that there's an exact solution to the equation, such as x equals 2, y equals -3, or z equals 4. Where if I plug that number into an equation, I know that that is the solution to that equation. For instance, if I had 2x plus 3 equals 7. To solve this, I have to subtract 3 from both sides first. And now I've got my variable alone, but I need to now divide 2 on both sides to get x completely by itself, which gives me x equals 2. This tells me there is one solution. 2 is the only solution, and if I plug that back in to the equation, I'll get 7 on this side, just like there is a 7 on the right side. So that tells us there is one solution. Now, many solutions means that any variable can be used, any number can be used to replace the variable and be a solution. And usually you see this when two sides equal each other and they're the exact same. So for instance, if I was to plug in, say, 4 into z on this one at the bottom, both sides would equal 0. Okay? But I could also do the same with 5, and if I plugged 5 into both sides would equal 1. That means that any number that I choose that I put into that variable will be a solution. So as an example, if I have a problem like this, I need to first combine any of the numbers that I have on those sides, which we really haven't gone over yet, but just combine any constants or any variables. So for instance, 2 plus 1 is 3, and x make a 2x. So I'm just simplifying it down to make it look a little bit nicer. But look, both sides are the exact same. That means that there are many solutions. Any number that I put into that variable x will give me the same numbers on each side of the equal sign. So there are many solutions. All right, we also have no solutions. And this means an equation has no solution. And this is usually represented by a solution that has two different numbers on both sides of the equation. Basically, that tells you, well, 0 doesn't equal 3, so that's not a solution, and 2 doesn't equal 1, and -5 doesn't equal 7. So if you ever see something like this, you know that there is no solution. So as an example, imagine we have a problem like this, and this is a little bit different than what we've gone over before, but it's not too difficult. So first we need to get the variable alone, and usually I like to leave the variable on the left side. So the opposite of adding 4 would be to subtract 4 from both sides. When I do that, these 4's, they cancel out because 4 minus 4 is 0. And I'm left with x equals x minus 1. Now, when I try to solve this equation, I see that I've got a variable on both sides. And I want this x right here on this right side to move to the left. And so just like we did with the -4, I'm going to take whatever the opposite of x is and do that to both sides so it moves to the left side now. So the opposite of a positive x would be a negative x. So I'm going to subtract x from both sides, which allows all my variables to be on the left. However, x minus x is like a 0x, which really is just 0. And 0 can't equal a -1. It just doesn't. So that means there is no solution. Now let's go through 4 different types of multi-step equation problems that are a little bit more advanced that you might see on your homework this week. Now there are 5 steps now. First, you need to distribute, then combine any like terms, then undo any addition or subtraction, then undo any multiplication or division, and finally, always check your answer. So example number 1. First step, we need to distribute. So when we distribute, we get 40n plus 20 because we distribute the 5 to both. So 5 times 8n is 40n. 5 times 4 is 20. Then we need to combine any like terms. Look to the left side and the right side. On the left side, I see a variable and two constants. Those two constants can be combined to make 27. And now we're just back to a regular two-step equation, which you guys did really great on last week. So to get 40n by itself, we need to subtract 27 from both sides. We need to use that inverse operation. Those 27s right there cancel out, and I get 40n equals 240. To solve for this, I need to divide by 40 on both sides, and I find out that I have one specific solution, and that is n equals 6. And if I was to plug that 6 in up here, I would get 267 on both sides as my solution. Example number 2. Now this one doesn't have any distributing in there, so we skip step number 1. But can I combine any like terms? So if I look to the left side, I see that there are two constants that can be combined. But on the right side, it's already down to a constant and a variable, so I can leave that alone. Now, negative 4 plus 5 makes a positive 1. Now I want to get all the constants on one side, and I tend to, like I said earlier, put the variables on the left and the constants on the right. So if I want to move this positive 1, I do the inverse operation, which is subtract 1 from both sides. And when I subtract 1 here, it cancels out, and when I subtract 1 here, it becomes a negative 2. Now I need to do the same exact idea with the variables. I want this variable to go over here. So the opposite of adding 4m would be to subtract 4m. Now look what happens. 4m minus 4m makes 0. And when I bring down that negative 2, it's telling me 0 equals negative 2. That's not possible, which means there is no solution because 0 cannot equal negative 2. All right. Let's look at another one. So we do have some distributing here again. So the first thing we're going to do is distribute. So when I distribute, I end up with a negative 5x plus 5. Do not forget that you're multiplying that. So negative 5 times x is a negative 5x. And a negative 5 times a negative 1 is a positive 5. Don't forget that sign in front of the 1. Now we want to get our variables on the left, our constants on the right. So the opposite of adding 5, the inverse operation, would be to subtract 5 on both sides. Now look at this. This is a 5 minus 5 and another 5 minus 5. Okay? So that's negative 5x equals negative 5x. All right? And so what that tells us is that those two things are exactly the same. They're exactly the same, so that means we have many solutions. Many solutions. All right, last problem, and this one looks terrifying. However, just go slow, don't panic, do your best. So first thing we need to do is distribute. Okay, so we distribute all of the numbers that are on the outside of the parentheses to the inside. So I end up with 10x plus 12 and 20 plus 8x. Now combine any like terms. Over here, we're good. There's a variable and a constant, and there's nothing else I can do. But over here, this time I can actually combine two variables. So that ends up giving us 11x. Now let's get the variables on the left, the constants on the right. The opposite of adding 12, the inverse operation, would be to subtract 12 from both sides. And I get 10x equals 8 plus 11x. Now let's move that other variable to the other side. And the opposite of adding 11x would be to subtract 11x. And I get a negative x on that left side and an 8 on the right side, because 10 plus negative 11 is a negative 1. But we don't put negative 1x because that's just kind of repetitive. Now the opposite, if negative x equals 8, we don't want it to be a negative. So we can just kind of flip that negative to the other side and just say, okay, if a negative x equals 8, then a positive x equals a negative 8. And we have one exact solution for this problem. X equals a negative 8. And that's it. You have a few practice problems to solve. Try it, do your best, and we will review it tomorrow. If you have any questions, please let me know.